Dearest Miquella.
Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is fast approaching, and there are a number of things you should do to prepare for the DLC and its many new challenges. In a game as big as Elden Ring, that list could practically go on forever, so we've condensed this video down to 9 main tasks. These are based both on what we know is coming in the DLC, as well as speculation from the community about some of the greater challenges and new bits of lore that may be in store for us in the Land of Shadow. Also, it's important to state that this DLC is not intended for brand new players. Just reaching the new content in Shadow of the Erdtree requires you to have cleared some difficult mid to late game encounters. If you're an Elden Ring newcomer, consider checking out our other guides for combat tips or things the game doesn't tell you. For the more experienced Tarnished out there, let's do this. The very first thing you need to do to prepare for Shadow of the Erdtree is make a choice: to start the DLC with a save file from a standard playthrough, or witness one of the game's endings and go in with New Game Plus. Only you can make that decision, but here are some things to consider. If you decide to go in with a totally new character, you'll need to do everything on this list, rather than just double checking what you've already cleared. The upside is that you could discover a fresh, fun build to take on the new challenges in the DLC. We'll talk more about builds in a bit. If you've finished the game but not converted that save into a New Game Plus run, then you should already have pretty much everything you'll need to start Shadow of the Erdtree with your best gear already equipped. If you do decide to play the DLC on New Game Plus, remember that it makes all parts of the game harder by its very nature, giving enemies more health and greater attack power. The flip side is that they'll grant more runes, which you can use to further increase your own power. But that's the consideration you have to make before even starting on the path toward the DLC. Hand in hand with New Game Plus is the question of what level you should be before taking on Shadow of the Erdtree. It's important to note that the DLC will introduce a new separate leveling system. Without knowing the details of that, this is really a question of maximizing your level within the base game. You should also grab yourself a few larval tiers if you decide to respec based on new encounters in the DLC. See the first link in the video description if you need help tracking down a few. We don't currently know if there will be more in Shadow of the Erdtree, or if the new leveling system will have an additional method of respecing. Regardless, most players will find themselves above level 100 as they near the end of the game. Taking on optional bosses like Mohg or Malenia, for example, is only recommended if you are in the 120s or 30s. If you have yet to clear every mini-dungeon, or if you've left a few great enemies alive, now's the time to take care of them. If you're looking to boost yourself quickly, we do have an updated rune farming guide you can use to get those numbers flowing. This might also be a good reason to go into the DLC via New Game Plus if you're considering it. That way you can fight the demigods for tons of runes and a second helping of their remembrances. Speaking of bosses, there are 2 you must defeat before you can start Shadow of the Erdtree. The first is General Radahn. We're not exactly sure why this is a requirement for the DLC, but director Hidetaka Miyazaki has confirmed as much. Radahn is not the first demigod we recommend taking on with any fresh character. At a minimum, you want to be above level 60, but preferably in the 70s. If you do go to Redmane Castle early, be prepared for heavy resistance around and inside the fortress. However, if you progress through the game and reach the Altus Plateau before visiting the castle, it'll actually be completely empty. In either case, you'll still have to face Radahn in one of the game's most epic and memorable fights. The other boss you must beat is Mohg, Lord of Blood. Confronting him in Mohgwyn Palace is a long and involved process, so we're going to refer to our guide on the fastest way to access the DLC for all the details there. But remember, there are a few branching paths that lead there. First, there's an online PvP and an offline PvE version of White Mask Vare's questline. Once you've communed with the Two Fingers for the first time, he'll appear at the Rose Church in Liurnia of the Lakes. The third path requires you to reach the Consecrated Snowfield, a hidden endgame area you can only access with 2 halves of a special medallion. Again, we have a whole other video guide for that, so give that a go if you need assistance reaching the Snowfield and the preceding region, Miquella's Erdtree. You might actually want to push into the Erdtree and explore that sprawling legacy dungeon more thoroughly. The tree was sprouted by Miquella, whose lifeless body now lies in an egg atop Mohg's palace. It would be good to familiarize yourself with this lore before starting the DLC, as it's going to be expanded upon in the new content. There is no shortage of information and speculation about Miquella out there on the internet, but the short version of the official story is this. Cursed to live as a child forever, Miquella grew the Erdtree as a way to remove the scarlet rot from their sister Malenia. Unfortunately, they were stolen away by Mohg before this process was complete. Their corpse remains in the egg while their spirit navigates the land of Shadow. There is also a rumor that they are not just Miquella, but also Saint Trina, a figure associated with sleep. The saint is teased at the end of the Shadow of the Erdtree trailer, so we're expecting to learn more about this in the DLC. In the meantime, if you are brave enough to explore the whole Erdtree and take on Miquella's guardian sister Malenia, you can learn more about their sibling relationship. Good luck with that. She's known for being one of, if not the toughest fight in the whole game. We do have a boss guide in the description that can help. You'll want to pick your best build not just for the Malenia fight, but also for all of Shadow of the Erdtree. We've already put together a video guide of 7 recommended builds, based on what we know and expect to encounter in the DLC, and that video is linked in the description as well. To quickly summarize, we know that there will be a poison area, so poison-resistant gear is a must for that. We also know that the new boss Mesmer uses fire attacks, so you'll want fire resistance too. Beyond that, you'll want to maximize your personal build with all the spells, talismans, ashes of war, and spirit ash summons that best suit your playstyle. Ignore the haters. Get that mimic tier ready to go. The rune farming we mentioned earlier comes into play again here, but you should also take care to maximize your flasks of crimson and cerulean tears. That means collecting every golden seed and sacred tear, which will increase the number of flasks you can carry and their effectiveness, respectively. For a list of all golden seed and sacred tier locations, as well as recommendations for the best accessories and spirit summons, follow the links in the video description. For a quick list, these are some of the best talismans in the game: the Great Jar's Arsenal, Assassin's Crimson and Cerulean Daggers, Crimson Amber Medallion, the classic Erdtree's Favor, and the multi-purpose Radahn Sword Seal. For Spirit Ash summons, you can't go wrong with the Mimic tier. Other great choices include Black Knife Tish, the Great Shield Soldiers, Latenna the Albinoric, and Omen Killer Rollo. Upgrading those requires Grave or Ghost Gloveworts, depending on the type of spirit. You can occasionally find these out in the world or inside catacomb dungeons, but you can also buy them once you visit the Twin Maiden Husks at Round Table Hold and hand over certain bell bearings. Glovewort Picker's Bell Bearing 1 is your prize for clearing the Wyndham Catacombs on Mount Gelmir. Clear the Giants Mountaintops Catacombs up north for Bearing 2. The third is found in Crumbling Farum Azula, in a gazebo at the southern tip by the small lake. From the Crumbling Beast Grave Depth Site of Grace, head west and take the lift down to reach this area. There are also 3 Ghost Glovewort Pickers bell bearings to obtain. The first is on a body at another gazebo in Nokron Eternal City, right down the steps from the Site of Grace of the same name. The second is at its sister city Noxtella. From the Site of Grace at the city entrance, head up the stairs and take a left to find the chest inside the first door. The last bearing is found in the graveyard at the bottom of Elefel, Brace of the Erdtree. There are also links to help you prepare for the new gear we're going to discover in Shadow of the Erdtree. We already know that 8 new weapon types are on the way, and you can prepare to upgrade them by building up your collection of smithing stones. These are dropped by enemies and found in many mining dungeons, but they can also be purchased if you hand over the right bells and bell bearings to the Twin Maiden Husks in Round Table Hold. Note that for the top tier Ancient Dragon smithing stones, there are a limited number available in the game. This might be yet another reason to choose New Game Plus for your playthrough, but regardless, we have every location marked in the second to last link in the description. There is one last little thing you should probably prepare for, and that's the Madness status effect. It doesn't come up too often in Elden Ring, so it wasn't necessarily expected in the DLC, but then From Software showed us a picture of this freak. Bloodborne fans immediately thought of that game's Winter Lantern, so there's heavy speculation that this thing will induce madness in any Tarnished who gets too close. There is no madness-resistant gear in Elden Ring, but you can raise your innate resistance to it with the focus stat. To increase that, you'll need to level up your mind. You can also clear up your madness meter with the lucidity spell or clarifying boluses. For the spell, you'll need to defeat Preceptor Miriam in the inverted Carrion study hall. If you don't know how to get there, don't worry, just hit the final link in the description here. Crafting clarifying boluses is simpler, but you'll need to learn the recipe from the Frenzied's cookbook. Grab it off the body in Frenzied Flame Village here in northern Liurnia. Then mix 2 Dew-Kissed Herba, 1 Crystal Cave Moss, and 1 Eye of Yellow. If you haven't come across any of those in your travels, you can always go for the Lucidity Sorcery. It's worth it to save your sanity. So don't lose your head. If you have any other questions about how to prepare for Shadow of the Erdtree, we've got you covered. For everything else Elden Ring and more, keep it locked at IGN.